from my days in the store. Some of y'all go back a long time. So we won't talk about dates. But yeah, it's good to be here. Adhesives is one of those things that all of us woodworkers have to use. And notice I did choose the word adhesives, not glue, because there's a slight difference there. Now, I am by no means somebody who is an expert in the world of adhesives. But I use a lot of different ones, and I've had to test a lot of different ones, and had to come to different conclusions on what certain glues and adhesives and products work good for different applications. Because, can everybody hear me? Let me just start with that. Okay, good. So, you might note on the slide that it says, by Mike Ziegler. No, I am not Mike Ziegler. That is my coworker. He wrote this back in 2017, and then he and I collaborated a little bit on it. I've tweaked a few things, and it's evolved since he originally wrote it in 2017, but I wasn't going to take his name off of it because that way it don't give me any credit. I don't want credit. But for those of you who know Mike, he's about that tall, I can't even reach that far, but very, very knowledgeable. When you're talking about finishing, he's one of the foremost experts I've ever communicated with on finishing. But anyway, how many of you use different adhesives in your woodworking or in whatever it is you do? Okay, good, because if you did raise your hand, I would be wondering what you use, because, it's pretty much required. So there's a lot of slides, and I'm not going to hit all the information on every slide, and you might note that I've got some samples up here, because I felt like if we were going to talk about it, it'd be important to know kind of what that looked like. Not only does it bond well, but what does the dried version of that look like? What's the adhesion level? What's the tensile strength? Because there's a lot of things that when it comes to glues and adhesives, it's important to know. And just like with sandpaper, no one adhesive is great for every project. How many of you thought one glue was good for everything? Okay, good. So at least we're starting on an educated ground. So the main thing that we'll do first look at is adhesives. What is adhesives? Can anybody tell me, other than this definition that's on the screen, what is an adhesive?
Something to make two pieces stick together.
Layman's terms, it's something to put on to make two pieces stick together, right? And sometimes, that can be a variety of different things, but it can either be a one-part product or a two-part product like epoxies. But ultimately, anything that you can put on something to make two pieces stick together and hopefully stay together, unless you need it to come back apart. See, that's the whole idea. Is there's no one thing, because if it's got to come back apart, well, you don't want a permanent bond. And we'll kind of cover some of that as we go into it. So, how many of you have made something simple like a cutting board? Okay? Most woodworkers, or how many of you have had to glue something together that it needed to stay together because it was going to be a permanent connection between the two? So that's pretty much all woodworkers have done that. So you have used glue. How many of you can recall back when you were in kindergarten or whatever, and for some of y'all that was a lot longer than others. How many can you recall back in kindergarten when you first started using glues and then you realized how cool it was to let it stick to your fingers and then let it dry and kind of peel it off? So we've all had this, or maybe it was just me that had this fascination with adhesives as a young person. I don't know. But either way, yeah, we can eat it. We've probably tried it, at some point. Yeah, but it's right here. Oh, boy, I got it. So, but that's the fun part of adhesives. And we even did, I think at the end, we talk about ways that you can make cool little kid stuff using glue as part of that mixture. So, there's a couple of things that typically come up when you start looking for an adhesive for your particular product or project. Excuse me. One is bond strength. How well is it going to bond? Is it going to hold? Is it going to hold up to weather? Is it going to hold up to a stretch and stress? Is it going to need to be structural? Or once it's together, is it pretty much, it's not going to have any stress on it at all, but you just need it to stay together. So bond strength is one of the key things you start to look for when you are shopping for your different adhesives. Another is tack. Okay, now, who can tell me what tack is? Stickiness, right. So if does it have stickiness? If you put the two pieces together and try to pull them apart instantly, does it have a good sort of tack together? And sometimes you want a really good tacky, gummy kind of glue because that really helps it stay in place. Some glues are very thin and some glues don't have much tack at all. You start getting into some of these instant adhesives and it's like, well, you put it there, you're stuck with it, right? So sometimes you want that tack. You want to be able to know that it's made good connection. And some of the way that works is how well you applied the glue. I won't talk about how I get lazy sometimes, we won't go there. But tack and bond strength are probably the two most important things, and I would probably throw into this slide application, because it kind of ties to both of those, but application does drive a lot of times to whether you're going to, which adhesive you're going to use. Is it an inside project or is it an outside project? The bond strength is important, and he's got a couple of graphics up here, and most of the ones that we all are familiar with is the shear. And that shear is essentially how much if the two parts are being twisted. Okay, that's a common application that you want to make sure that it's going to have good shear strength. Also, is it going to have good tensile strength and peel strength? Because you don't want it to peel apart. And if you've laminated a bunch of pieces and it's going to be under stress this way, let's say a bent lamination, for instance. You know, Ted, you made guitars. I'm assuming you do a lot of bent laminations. So you understand the importance of having that strength along the bend that it's not going to come apart. And the proper adhesive makes all the difference. So those are just some of the types of joint stresses that your particular project might see. Tensile, shear is that side-to-side movement. Peel is one edge is being pulled on from an edge. Cleavage, and then compress. Sometimes it might be getting pushed from one side or the other. And certain adhesives, and we'll get to this later, like the CA glues, the super glues, they make such a tight bond that they don't have a lot of shear movement side to side. Whereas like the foam glues, like Gorilla Glue, being foam, it has a lot more forgiveness for wood or from stresses that do have that side-to-side movement. So understanding what you're doing, that's why it's so crucial that you go to the application first before you start going to choose the adhesive you're going to use for the application. Does that make sense? Okay. Some other things that are important. Open time. Open time is basically how long is it going to be active once you've sort of started the process. Epoxies especially. If you go to look at epoxies, typically you'll see terms like 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Those are quicker cure times on these epoxies because they're what they call 2-to-1, or excuse me, it's a two-part systems, and those have an activation time. And so that open assembly time on them is very, very quick generally, unless you go with a longer hardener. Certain glues like CA glues, they can be, or cyanoacrylate, they can be instant, at times. So whereas things like Gorilla Glue or Type Bond 3, those have a much longer working time. Hide glue gives you more time to get your clamps together, align your parts, things like that. So those are all parts of the equation when you start looking at open assembly time. Because how many of you have been clamping something and the glue started drying on you real quick and you got stuck, right? So then you got two choices. You try to press on and hope things hold, or you start tearing it back apart while you still have a chance. I've been on both sides of that coin, and both sides of that coin are horrible. Okay? You start tearing it back apart with this one. You got to let that glue dry and clean it all up. If you just hope for the best, rarely does the best happen, right? So you have to decide when you start looking at open times what that's going to work. Closed assembly time. What kind of shelf life is it going to have? Once you put the glue on the substrate, are you going to have enough time to get to the rest of the process. Getting enough clamps on the piece. If you're trying to glue bent laminations, I'll come back to that, because there's a lot of clamps involved in bent lamination. If you've never done it, it's basically where you have this curved surface, and you're trying to bend a lot of thin pieces to this curved surface, and you have to, one, you have to get all your pieces in there, and two, you've got to get your jigs and your forms or your clamps on it so that it maintains that curve. And that's a lot of work to not only get the clamps on it, but also keep your parts from not slipping and sliding all over each other, so that you can maintain a nice even surface, so that when you do clamp it, it's all done. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that leads into the clamp time. And we talked about that just a moment ago. So then, how long does it require? What kind of time frame does it require me to leave this project clamped up, sitting and waiting before I can take it off and use it? Because we are impatient people, right? We want to get back to the project. Well, guess what? If you got clamps going on, that's the perfect time, especially in a hobby shop. You ain't got nothing else going on. Go sit back, drink you some coffee, watching YouTube or something, find something else to do, but just let the clamps do the job, let the glue set up properly, because there's nothing worse than taking things out of the clamps too early just to find you've messed up and now you've got to spend all this time putting it back together again. Okay? So, freeze-thaw stability. So a lot of your water-based type glues, what happens to water if it freezes? That can create very adverse effects in your glue. I have had it happen. I'm going to use it. Well, it's a much better deal for me to buy this jug here. Do I need a quart? No, but it was a lot better price than this little bitty jar was. So I'm going to buy the quart. I'm going to use it. And guess what happens if it freezes? You can go through generally you can get away with a freeze-thaw scenario a couple of times on some glue like this. But it does start to deteriorate the molecular integrity of it. So then it comes out gummy or sticky, or some glue may get moldy inside the jug if it goes through a lot of the freeze thaw or high humidity. So you gotta watch that. Some glues, like the Type Bond 2 and 3, they've got mold inhibitors in them, so they do not mold in the bottle, which is nice. So you just kind of have to know that when you're dealing with that freeze thaw, ideally, and my wife doesn't like it, but I'll figure out a place to put it. I'll bring my jar of glue in with me, and I'll stick it in the cabinet where it's out of her side, out of mine, so I don't get in trouble. But then I'm able to have mine in a regulated, temperature-controlled environment, because I don't have that in my shop. Anybody have a regulated, temperature-controlled shop? A little bit jealous, just got to be honest, all right? I can turn the heater on, I can turn the air conditioner on, but it don't run all the time because there's no insulation. So that's one way that I've learned to help myself prolong the shelf life of my glue, is keeping it in a sort of a temperature-controlled environment when I can. And so, let's see, we won't talk about the chalk. Squeeze out. How many of you tried not to have any squeeze out? Yeah, well, I want to see that balloon bubble out because I want to make sure I got good coverage. Now that can also have an adverse effects if you put so much clamping pressure that all your glue squeezes out and you don't leave any in there to maintain the bond. So the common term would be a squeeze out, and I have left squeezed out on most of these samples up here. A starved joint when you don't have enough glue. Okay, when you don't have enough to truly make that bond, and we as woodworkers sometimes get lazy and don't want to take the time to make sure we've got ample glue everywhere, because we don't want to have to deal with the cleanup on the back side of that. Let's see, too thick is another common term. And I think if we put too much glue, that can create too much of a gap between the two substrates that we're putting together. So you gotta watch out for that. Let's see, sunken step. I want to skip some of these because we really got to move into the meat of the matter.
Chris, do you consider epoxy being glue or adhesive?
It's definitely adhesive. And you bring up epoxy, we'll talk about this more in depth. The epoxy that you use to like a pour countertop is not necessarily the same epoxy that you want to look at for adhering to something that needs structural integrity. So understand that there's a dozen or more options when it comes to epoxy. If you don't believe me, you can check out the new Total Boat shelf out there once it's full. There's a lot of options, and they all do different things. And not one product will do everything. So keep that in mind.
Chris, you talked about putting glue on the boards, and I found that it's better to take a brush and brush your glue out than you make up and brush your glue out rather than just put one bead down the middle and hope it squeezes where you want to go. Because if you don't smooth it or make sure that you glue on every surface, most time it's not going to squeeze where you would get it. It's always.
And yeah, in a lot of cases, it is better to smooth it out, to have a smooth surface. Now,
use their finger, but
yeah, old school, that's what we did, and then usually it's, if we've got an apron, it's wipe on the apron, or if we've got a workbench, there's like a giant glob right about where you're doing your assembly, because that's where you wipe your finger off, and it builds up over time. Unless again, maybe it might just be me. And then, about once a year I'll go in there and I'll just smack it with a chisel and knock it off and get it clean again. But yes, but there's a lot of different, not just theories, but wiping it smooth, whether that be with a brush, or they've got these little silicone pieces with little notches in them. Those are effective. I like the notch idea. It helps me confirm that I'm not too heavy in one place, and it brings me back to my days of doing tile work. It's like with the notch trowel, I know I've got an even bed on there, but at the same time, if you have too heavy of notches, you fall into the category of too thick of a glue bed. So
the little utility brushes you get, 100 in a pack of kid buzz.
Yep.
They're throwaways. You get through with them at the end of the day, don't go wash them out to each other.
Yep.
You cut them down a little bit, they work something that.
Oh, really? There you go.
Well, see me, what I've switched to, I used to use those brushes because we sell them. I've switched to the little silicone flat piece, and the reason why I like it is because the silicone, you just leave it done and leave it on there thick. It doesn't matter. Let the glue dry. You crack it a couple of times, and the whole thing slides right out the silicone. And so I said, I can buy this once. And I bought one of our little kits, so it's got a little tray. It's got a couple of different size ends on each end of the brush. One has got a flat, sort of a paddle look, and the other's got a little dowel looking piece. So that one tool, I can get inside of little dowel areas with it, and the other end I can kind of wipe clean, like if I'm doing a 3/4 board. Now, if I'm trying to glue, something wide, then I'm going to switch over to a roller, or something that'll help me move a little quicker. I've even taken sticks before and I'll just put glue on it real heavy, and I'll just use a stick to create this trowel sort of effect, whatever it means to save time, because I've done glue jobs where if you're doing a big enough surface, by the time you properly brush that out with something small, it's already dry. So we got to find what will work best. That's where I would move back to something like the Type Bond 3 with a little longer clamp and work time. But yeah, you definitely just don't want to do a bead and let it call it a day. Now, saying that, I did use 3 beads for each of these samples because I wanted them to go even, and I did not smooth them out. I just wanted to do it intentionally that way, just because I can.
Chris, I like those small picking knives and teeth to do small beads.
And so that's the beauty of us being woodworkers. We all have a preference that works good for us. The key is as long as it works, right? And we've most likely worked through all of the trial and error to ensure that whatever adhesive we're going to use, if you can get the best adhesive for your project, but if you don't apply it to the substrate correctly, you've already messed up.
Don't they also have caps that you can put on these bottles that spread it out when you're applying it?
Yeah.
You've got them here, I think.
Yeah, we've got all sorts of trinkets and gadgets and gizmos on the glue section out there. So, let's see. Temperature. That is, I wanted to hit this out of that bottom paragraph because how many of you have tried to glue in the wintertime, those of you who don't have to climate-controlled shops. Tried to glue in the wintertime and realized that glue is very, very stiff and sometimes hard to squeeze out, and it comes out kind of different than it does in the summertime when it's 85 in your shop. Right? So understanding the temperature, which is the other reason why I like to have this in my house, because I know that it's regulated. The downside is the wood that I'm putting it on has been left in my shop, and that cold wood will have just about as much effect on how it adheres as the cold glue would. So you might have warm glue but cold wood, and those two, once they become, the glue doesn't react well to the cold wood. So you've got to understand all of those scenarios, both environmental and everything else that's involved when you start getting adhesives, because they will make and break your project. Let's see, adhesion, cohesion, let's see. I want to hit a lot of these. We'll briefly hit that. So the idea is you have to have good adhesive on both parts, and then when you put the two together, if you were to pull them apart, you would see glue on both parts evenly, and you would see where that glue is kind of separating itself. That means you've done a good job with the adhesion part, okay? And that's a key component, that you've got good adherence on both sides of your piece, and the glue itself still has some of that sort of tacky, stretchy feel. Now, obviously, we don't want that feel once it's dried, but that's kind of how I always like to do. I like to put two parts together, and I like to just sort of give them just a little twist, and I want to pull them apart. I want to see how that glue is reacting to the material, because sometimes that can help me understand, one, how long I'm going to have to work with it, despite what the bottle says, how maybe materials, and we'll cover this in a moment about, you get into some of the exotic materials that are very oily. They definitely don't react the same as a domestic wood that's, say, like an oak or a walnut that's not. They don't react the same as these exotics do. Trust me. So there's processes you may have to go through to help them react the same. Let's see. So if you've ever torn a piece apart, like this board originally was glued to this. When I took it out of the clamps too early, and I used epoxy, I pulled on this just to see, because I wanted to see how well that was early. And it quickly broke free. I could feel it letting go. So I went ahead and clamped it back up, because I wanted to just test this. But when I took it back out, after I knew the clamping time and the dry time and the cure time was correct, I could pull on this gently, and it did give a little resistance, but it did pull. And what I noticed was that this one board, and that's why I left it, you can see that it didn't have a whole lot of epoxy. It had one little area where it clearly had the epoxy, but the rest of the area did not. So I left this out on purpose because I wanted to talk about it, because it ties in to that adhesion and cohesion situation. Let's see. So those are the top three reasons why it's going to fail. It'll either be because the adhesive fails, it'll either be because the substrate failed, or it could be a combination of both. And this is kind of using those same sort of stressors. Mike put together this list of different cracking, splitting. What you're looking for is a cohesive setup like this first one on the top left, where the glue becomes, or the adhesive becomes stronger than the material itself. And you can see the material is splitting. That's what you're looking for. You want the material to fail, not the joint itself. Okay? And if you've ever used Gorilla Glue for anything, you know that pretty much makes that happen. There's some ways that can generate some other problems. Did anybody have any questions on the graphic before I move on? Okay. These are some photos of kind of what that would look like, where the adhering fails. So you can see the piece on the left. That first piece is it's just got a little bit of glue in the one part, and the other part is full. Cohesion, you can see both parts are equally glued. That makes life easy. I don't know if this was, yeah, there we go. I asked for a laser pointer, and I was denied. So I'm going to continue to complain, And you can feel free to call Coleman and say, hey, this would have been a lot better presentation if he'd had a laser pointer. Just for whatever that means. Because I could point back there and none of y'all would see it. So, but you can see here that it had good adhesion on one part, but not this part, okay? So typical glues and adhesives in woodworking. How many of you have used hide glue? Okay, those who have used hide glue, granular is in a hot pot. Really? Okay. Liquid. All right. So liquid's the most common because you don't have to have the hot pot. If you go with the granulars, you got to mix a little bit of water, and you got to put it in a hot pot, then you got to let it work its magic and come to a certain temperature so that it's truly melted together. Then you have a certain working time that you got to operate within. Hide glue is very popular for instrument makers, furniture makers, furniture makers. Why? Because it's got a decent bond and it will hold well. It's got a long working time, so you got plenty of time to clamp with it. The downside with it is if you mess up, well, I guess it's a plus, both a pro and a con, with the hide glue, is if you mess up, you can use some water and it'll dissolve it and kind of open it back up. It is protein based. Have you ever heard the old joke when the horses can no longer run, they send them off to the glue factory? Well, it's not technically made from horses, but it is made from, yeah, I guess, other things. So hide glue is made from natural products, and it does a good job. It's been around forever, but of course, like everything, technology's tried to make it obsolete, but I don't think hide glue will ever truly go away because it has a good following and it has a place in the adhesive market as woodworkers.
Yeah. One nice thing about hide glue, and I use it for repairing antiques and stuff, because it tries to stay conditioned. Any squeeze out, it can dry, you just mix up water and just rub it, it squeeze out and come right off.
Yeah.
So it's easy to clean up something that you're working with if you accidentally get some squeeze out. Now, the other glues, you can't do that. It does clean up pretty well.
Yeah, and that's, you just got to be careful. You don't want to come approach your overflow with excessive water that it wicks back into your joint. So that's the thing you got to be cautious with is, yes, it is very water soluble even after it's dried, which can be adverse if you're too aggressive with your water on cleanup. One of the things about this is, and we talked about strength earlier, Tite Bond, this liquid hide glue has a tensile strength pulling side to side of 500 psi. It's not real high. This will fail before your wood will in most cases, but for most applications in woodworking, it's acceptable. Unless your particular part is something like a door where it's always under stress, hide glue is a very good option. And like you said, a lot of the antiques, they used to use that primarily as their main source of adhering two pieces together. Some of the advantages is it's non-toxic. Oops. So it doesn't have a bad smell when you're using it, whereas some of the other adhesives do. You saw me, I kind of lifted it, and I did that jokingly, but it has no smell, which is nice. Compared to others especially, and we'll get into a couple others that do. So,
for future guys still coming from Steve's backyard. My dad tells vitamins.
okay. And now I will say this too. This has a nice, I can't remember the word for it, but basically it's flexible. There's a scientific word for it, and I've got it in here somewhere because I added it in a graph at the end. It's got a little bit of flex to it, so if your part has a little movement to it, anything that's got a stringed instrument type project, it's always going to be under stress. The minute there's strings, whether it's a guitar, or violin, or anything that has strings that's tensioned to make that instrument work, it's going to be always under stress, and it's going to always have some movement. Certain things, certain of the adhesives like this, they won't do as well in CA glues as like this with the hide glue or the yellow glue will, because it has a little more elasticity to it and allows for some of that movement.
It's great on the more tennis joints on chairs, especially, like you say, because it's got a little bit of movement.
Yep.
You put a chair rubber in, where it's going to work forward, and use that. Chairs always moving.
Yeah.
That works great at home. Use that little bit of flexibility.
And that's the key, is that's why it's such a popular glue in this lineup, because of its flexibility and its stretchability that it has, but yet it still maintains the bond. So it kind of has a lot of pros with it. Let's see, there's some of the disadvantages. We kind of already hit on some of those. You can put warm water next to it or on it to clean, and obviously if there's a finish on top of it, that finish isn't going to affect the glue. But if you're still bare wood and you're doing some cleanup with warm water around it, you could sort of loosen that bond just a little bit. And as you can probably attest, on the older pieces, it in its older age, kind of like many of us, we become more brittle in our old age. Well, so does the hide glue. These hints and tips on this, a lot of these are going to be the same for a lot of these glues. The surface you are putting together needs to be clean, it needs to be dry. Can't have a lot of dust on it. Now I'm going to add this to the conversation. If you sand the wood too fine, you can create adhesion problems. Keep that in mind. You close off the grain too much and the glue or adhesive doesn't have anything to really bond to. And so this was a great test because I didn't sand these. These all come right out of the planer because I wanted to see just how well the epoxy would hold to a burnished surface. So see, this was more of a test because I've not used this photo boat. So this was a good test for me to sort of put this little thing together because I wanted to see, and being able to drive this down, I'm quite impressed with the structural integrity of that epoxy on that burnished wood. Okay? Now if I would have lightly sanded it, it would have been even better. Okay? All right. We're still talking about hide glue, sorry. 1% vinegar solution. Okay, well this is, if you're using the granulars, that second paragraph is really talking a lot about the melting session of it. You want to get that good melted in that water, and because it is water soluble, that gives you that working time. CA glue. How many of you have used the CA glues before? Okay, everybody's familiar with Stick Fast. We've got our version here, which is what I used. So everybody likes either the thin, medium, or the thick. Everybody's got a preference. Like my personal preference is I like the medium. I keep it readily available in the shop because it has a lot of purposes. The thin, in my opinion, is too thin. And you can't control it. You put it on something and it's like trying to go everywhere but where you want it. The medium, at least you can put a drop and it, for the most part, will stay there. Trim carpenters have started using it a lot on the job sites, especially the medium, because if they're doing the crown or they're doing window casing, any kind of return, they can put a drop of this on the return, hold it, maybe even spritz it with the activator, and it's all assembled and done and ready to go. It has really saved a lot of time. I like it too because I cut myself a lot for whatever reason. So if you can clean it up a little bit, pinch it together, and hopefully put a drop of glue and not glue the cut together and your other fingers together, then you walk away like this, then you've done good. But it does work pretty well as a slight cut sealant and keeps that together so you're not bleeding all over everything. Now, is that the solution to not go get stitches if you need stitches? No, because sometimes you just need to go get stitches, but for minor little cuts, it does work well. This is not me offering medical advice, by the way.
Different consistencies for straight, but if I'm doing binding around it,
Yep.
the thin, and letting it wick down with some crap.
Yep. And that's the thing. The way they promote these in the line is the fin is wiring for that purpose, to wick into those really tight areas, to structure, to add some structural integrity. Let's say you've got some old rotted, punky, dry rotted wood. Okay, you need to make that a little more structural. Well, guess what? The fin is the perfect solution for that, because it'll penetrate and it'll wick into those areas. Now, the problem with some of these is the dry time is incredibly fast. So you got to know what you're doing. If I was going to glue this together and I added the activator to the other part, the minute I put the two together, I have no more options. I'm done. My options are over. If I put the CA on the one part and put two pieces together and kind of get it where I need it, as long as I can hold it, you got a few seconds. The thin is going to be quick. The medium, you probably have 10 to 15 seconds of work time if you hold the two pieces together. The thick, you'll have a lot more working time, maybe closer to 30 if you're not using an activator. And again, the substrate you're using is going to vary. If I'm trying to do MDF, well, I mean, it's going to suck the glue right out and it's going to dry quickly. If I'm using something hard, like two pieces of glass, I tried using CA glue one time to a rear view mirror to to the glass, and I thought, really, we're good. Well, it was in the middle of winter. The next morning when I came out, the mirror was down on the floor. I'm like, well, I guess that didn't hold. I don't know what's in that glue that they use for that, but it is not CA glue. So I put this out there. You learn from your mistakes. But yes, CA glue is very popular. For making jigs, for making quick setups, and it's got a really good strength to it. So if you use it, you know that don't plan on it coming apart. But it's such a hard bond that if I were to hit this really with something blunt really quick, it would probably shear these two pieces off, because it does not have much elasticity to it. It doesn't have much flex to it. It's a very hard, quick bond, but it does work for a lot of really good applications. And wood turners and woodworkers typically have CA glue in one of these three options, sometimes all three options, and even the flexible. There's a flexible option as well. So they're very popular for fixing knots. If you've got a piece of wood with a knot that you're concerned about, you can put a little bit of that thin in there and it'll pull right in. If it's got a little more of a gap that you need to fill, you can put that medium in there and it'll wick right down in there nicely. So CA glue has benefits. The downside is, if you're sitting here and you pop this cap, you're going to know it, right?
Is the fume from the CA glue, is that actually toxic or?
Yeah.
Because it stings my eyes, but I don't know if it's actually, when I breathe it in.
I've learned what I like about our CA glue is if you look inside the cap, there's a little metal pin. So the benefit of that metal pin is every time the tip's always getting marred up on the other style. This keeps a clean tip, it keeps the hole punched, and it makes it where I can do this out here. And I'll give you this piece of advice. If you use the kind that like the stick fast, for instance, just do this. Set the glue on the counter, okay? Take the tip off and cut your tip away from the glue. That way you don't risk, because I know you've done it, you have the bottle in your hand and you cut the tip and all of a sudden you squeezed it at the same time the tip is movable and you squirted CA glue all over again. Again, it could just be me. I don't know. So I'm not afraid to say I have squeezed thin glue all over my hand when the tip finally broke free and I had too tight of a grip on the bottle. So I've learned to start gripping the threaded part up here when you cut that tip. That way you don't accidentally squeeze the glue out and you don't smell it because it's bad. Now, what's really bad is if any of you turn and you use CA glue, let's say you're going to glue up a pin, you put that in there. If you don't let that dry and you start sanding it too soon, guess what? You have reactivated all of those fumes. And if you've done anything where you've reactivated it, you quickly knew you should have just let it ride. Okay? Let's see. How much time we got? I don't know.
You've been 40 minutes so far.
Oh, so I need to move along and get done then. Okay. All right, let's do this. You've got your water-soluble glues, your yellow glues, if you will. Klingspor is our version. Type 2 is another version. These two are pretty comparable. You won't find that there's going to be a lot of difference between these two. These are both very good for wood applications and some other applications. These are both water resistant. Water resistant is the key word there. They will clean up with water. I always recommend leave the bead, leave the bubble, don't wipe it, because if you wipe it, what you've done is you've smeared that glue and you've now caused all the surrounding areas of that joint to then not hold stain or not hold finish. You're going to have a different result. Let it beat up, let it dry, and then you can take a scraper, literally in one foul swoop, you scrape that, and all that dried bubbled up glue will scrape right out. These two are going to be the most common of what most woodworkers are going to use for most projects. The tensile strength is about 3,700 PSI, which is really good. You're not going to have any problems with your parts breaking apart, as long as you've done your job of making sure both pieces are equally sanded and prepared and clean and dry. You'll have no issues. If you need to use yellow glue on like an exotic wood, Purple Heart or Paduke or some oily cocobolo that you know is going to be presenting that oiliness all the time, you can hit it with some acetone or denatured alcohol. Just give it a good clean before you're ready to add that glue to the mix. And what you'll find is at least using that acetone or that denatured alcohol helps clean the oils away from those exotic woods, and you have a better chance of these two working for you. If you don't want to do that, then you're going to be forced to go other alternatives and use one of these on this end of the table. Okay, so these yellow glue's been around a long time. It's used for a lot of things. Type Bond several years ago came out with the Type Bond 3. You'll notice it by its little more brownish color, not your traditional yellow. Benefits of Type Bond 3. It is actually waterproof above the water line. You don't want to build a boat using this, although I guess you could. But they recommend it's waterproof, but above the water line, so it doesn't need to be submerged. If you're going to build something that's going to be submerged in water, choose something else. But if you're going to build an outdoor piece of furniture that's going to have exposure to weather, this is a great glue. It's got a long clamp time. It's got a little more elasticity to it. It has 4,000 PSI on its tensile strength, so it's a little stronger, and the access to the longer open time, the longer clamp time, that gives you a little more viability. I do a lot of it. It's in a strong bottle as well. Yeah, I do a lot with MDF. This is my personal preference if I'm doing MDF, because MDF is so porous, it sucks the moisture right out of the glue, and you don't get a good long clamp time. And sometimes I found that it can have adverse effects using the yellow glues, but the Type Bond 3, it gives me enough working time when I'm clamping those speaker parts together for that particular customer that I can still get it done in a timely fashion, and it's really strong.
Chris, is there any downside to using that glue? Okay, so if you're going to have just one glue in the shop, that would be a good one to look at.
Do you ever use sawdust? It's a good option. Now, one of the downsides is, do you ever use your sawdust as your filler, so that you mix glue and your sawdust together to create your own floor. This does not do well with sawdust to mimic the color of the wood. I don't remember who it was. Somebody did a video a long time ago of using all the different glues to try to make your own floor using sawdust, and the yellow glue presented the best, closest result. So I would say if you're looking for one glue to do it all, this might not be the answer, but if you're looking for one glue to do most, I'm a big fan of the Type Bond 3. I do like it. I keep this in my shop, I keep this in my shop, I keep this in my shop, and it won't be long until I have this in my shop. So, and as we go down the line, you'll see that the tensile strength increases dramatically along the way, with the exception of this. So is there any questions on the yellow glue? I want to make sure.
In my experience, if you do laminations with the 2 and 3, they're more likely to have a creep where they don't stay as even.
Yep.
You mentioned flexibility.
Well, I definitely noticed with the yellow glue, the Type Bond 2 and the Clean Bond, that it creates a slip and slide effect for sure.
I mean, after it's dried over time, the laminations will.
Oh.
The trick, my trick to what you're talking about is a little bit of salt on the wood around planting spots.
And I've seen videos where people have used salt, but I have not heard of anybody where they've actually been scientific results stating if that salt has adverse effects on the glue.
I usually I do my laminations ahead of time, and it's where I end up cutting it out later.
Okay, because I mean, I've used it myself. I just don't know, because we know salt degrades certain things. I don't know if salt would degrade that, but a lot of people have.
You put salt on the wood, sprinkle it on the wood.
I'll put my wood, get my glue all spread out, and then I'll put just sprinkle a couple of, just a tiny bit where my plants are going to be, and then it's not as likely to slip inside. Yes, exactly.
It probably dissolves if you glue it with the plant stuff. Is it actually in the glue?
It is. Like I was saying, usually if I'm doing laminations, I'm cutting the piece out later and I'm purposely putting it with the salt outside of it.
Talk about that maybe go to Chris, but the Gorilla Glue will set up on wet boards. So when I've had to do laminations for after being boards, I would soak them or steam them and then put the Gorilla Glue on it, and it will set up as perfectly in the clamps or in the form. You don't have to worry about a couple loose with air or tight bonds, things like that. We'll not do that. The water will destroy the bond on those. Gorilla Glue works great.
Well, that's because Gorilla Glue is a moisture-cured adhesive. Now, there are downsides to that adhesive, and we'll hit those. I guess we'll roll into that now. I will preface this. It is not toxic unless you ingest it, so don't eat it. We talked about eating glue earlier. This is not the white craft glue, but this is the yellow glue, so don't eat it. When you start getting into, well, they don't talk about Gorilla Glue in the slide, so I'm going to hit it. Gorilla Glue is moisture cured. The downside with Gorilla Glue is if you've ever seen spray foam, the more moisture you have, the more foam you are going to have. Okay? Now that foam is okay, but I encourage you to do this. Once it's dry, can you take your fingernail and poke into that foam? And that answer is yes. Okay? So if that foam is still malleable by me poking it with my thumbnail, I can't do that with a yellow glue. Okay? So the problem with Gorilla Glue is, yes, it's great in moisture situations. It's a great product for doing outdoor projects, but the shear strength on it doesn't have the tensile strength that the yellow glues does, surprisingly. Okay, so you do lose a little bit of that. It's got a lot more elasticity, because of the foam that's been expanded, but it doesn't have the tensile strength that the others do. So a lot of people think, oh, Gorilla Glue will hold anything, and it will, because it bonds so well to the wood. If you tried to break that off, you would end up with wood splinters in both pieces. So it's a great glue. It bonds well, it tacks well. That's what makes it such a good glue for outside and in moisture adherent applications. Yeah. So, but this is a really good glue if you're doing outdoor projects. I rarely use this in my woodworking though, because I hate the foam. The foam out is, in a lot of my applications, is not worth it. Because it has a longer work time, clamp time, now that's, if you got something that's saturated with water, it's going to dry fast, so you got to be quick. But certain applications like that, I can see where that would work. But they all have pros and they all have cons, and that's the thing. If we all did the same kind of woodworking, if we were just gluing up cutting boards, then it would be an easy fix, right? But we're not. Any questions on the Gorilla Glue? Okay. Next, we got epoxies. Now, how many of you have used epoxies before? For actual adhesives, not as a finish. Okay. So traditionally, what you're looking at, like with System 3, it's a two-part, okay, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Understand whatever epoxy you're going to use, understand what that manufacturer's mixing instructions are, and you better adhere to them to the letter, or to the number rather. If it's a 1-to-1, what does that mean? One part of each. If it's a 2-to-1, hey, there we go. It got a little quieter, but somebody still piped up. That means you're mixing 2 parts of one and 1 part of one to create that mixture. Now, being epoxy, extremely hard. I mean, it's the total boat here has a tensile strength of 8,000 psi. Okay, it ain't coming apart. That's why it's used for boats. Okay, heavily used in the marine industry. This is waterproof above or below the waterline. This is what's known as a structural product, a structural adhesive. Okay, so structural that you ever see those little super glue commercial with the guy hanging from the girder in his hat? Epoxy would do that. I mean, this stuff is really strong, and there's variations of it from a structural side, a 5-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute, a little longer work time. Then they've got the pour, which is, they've got different levels of pour. You can do the thin pour, which is a 1/4 inch, or you can do the medium pour, which is up to 1 inch, or you can do the deep pour, which is up to 2 inches or 3 inches. So you can't use the thin pour the same way you can use the deep pour. Just like you can't use the structural the same way you would use the deep pour. They all have a purpose. So understanding your application is crucial to making sure you got the right product. I didn't need structural integrity to put this piece together, but I did. I wanted to put this so you could see. Now, you can't see it from there, but like this kit from Total Boat, I used the resin. This is the high performance, and I got the fast hardener. Okay, they have a medium hardener and they have a slow hardener. You buy the kit, the kit includes 2 of these cups. It includes the resin and the hardener, and it includes the automatic pumps. So whereas most of the time you have to pour your part 1 in the cup or your part 2 in the cup, and then mix the 2 together, you have to kind of make sure your ratios are correct. Can everybody see? Oh, there you go. Can everybody see that lid? Maybe? Let me find it. There we go, 2-to-1. This pump goes in the hardener. This other pump goes into the resin. 1 press of this and 1 full press of this is all you need. Okay? It automatically gives you your ratio right out of the gate by choosing the pump. Okay? So as long as you put the pump in the right container, and there's instructions in there to make sure you do, literally mix mix it together, there's no guesswork, there's no making sure I'm eyeballing this, because I promise you, if you have never used epoxy, if there's anything you gotta make sure you read the instructions on, is how to properly mix this. Some of these people like to whip it in just fast as they can. That is not the way to do it. Some people like to use those grill attachments. You can get away with that, but what you want is you want a slow mix and fold, kind of like you're mixing up the batter for a cake. So it'll be slow. You want to mix it thoroughly, let everything gets interactive and intertwined, because if not, you'll know it real quick. And I will tell you, the fast hardener gets so hot. Okay, they give you 2 cups with this kit. The second cup, the second pour, the second pour melted through this cup. It got so hot, it melted the cup. And I was like, good to know. Maybe that's why they gave me 2 cups. But I've got these samples up here, and I will tell you from a woodworker's perspective, both as a woodworker myself and as somebody who works here and has seen and used a lot of our products, I can honestly say there is no one product that fits all applications. If it's outdoors, if it's going to be in the weather, at a minimum, I recommend going with the poly glue or the epoxies to adhere it. The epoxies will never let go. If it's a general woodworking project, a piece of furniture, an instrument, it'd be tough to go wrong with any of these yellow glues in this line up here, or with the high glue. Certain quick applications where you need repairs, this is the way to go. Now, I don't even really talk about this. Everybody familiar with contact adhesive? Okay, how many of you do scroll work, or where you use patterns on your piece of wood? So you probably are familiar with this, because what you do is you spray this on the surface and just roll your template right onto it. Okay, then you can do your scroll work right on your template, because one squirt of this just on one surface would be great for applying paper templates. Or let's say you're going to apply one template that you need to be pulled off. This sprayed on one surface only will generate a temporary removable option. If you put this on both surfaces, it's kind of like, it's contact cement. So if you've ever seen or done plastic laminate countertops, it creates a permanent bond, and it's designed to. And this is still tacky, and this has been on well over a week. So choosing the right glue makes all the difference in the world. Every application requires something a little different. What questions do you have?
This on patterns, you bet you use that to put on patterns with.
Yep.
It works good. To take it off, mineral spirits, just scrub the pattern with mineral spirits. It's a little heavy coat, and it'll release it.
Yep.
And then you can wipe the residue off of mineral spirits. It comes off there.
There you go, indeed. So I've got these samples up here if anybody wanted to come look at them. What I did is I left the bead out. I actually applied a bead in the groove so that you could see what it looked like dried. I left these 2 cookies from my turtle boat jar experiment, and you can see how well this dried. If anybody does use cups to mix any of your leftover, just squeeze that like this, and that'll come right out. Any questions?
Contact cement works very well for veneer. Do you have a better choice?
It depends. The downside with contact cement is you better have it where you want it, because it ain't coming back off.
That's what I was asking, if maybe you have a better choice.
Well, if it's on something flat, the contact cement's a great option. What I would recommend from my laminate days is just get yourself some like 8 1/4 inch dowels and just line that surface with that so you can maneuver that piece of veneer over your workpiece correctly. And you pull off one dowel at a time, and you kind of press it and pull off you pull off, and you work your way from one end to the other, then you can J-roll it, and it's good. So there's nothing wrong with the contact cement in that application. You just better have, if it's on something curved that's gonna be moved, I wouldn't use it, because you're gonna have to, when it's there, it's there.
So what's a better choice, or is it like?
Yellow glue, but you gotta have a way of clamping it. That's the downside. If it's something where you can't put a clamp on it, contact cement's really your best option, because it will make that contact immediately once it makes contact with the two parts. So in some cases, you don't have a choice.
It's all about the contact, if you put on both sides, and they almost durable.
Yep. And I did some of these laminate tops that came in, the school built those lathe seams, and there was some of that laminate that was just completely flopped off. And so I spent some time fixing a lot of those, and that was the only way I could figure out that and CA glue to fix a couple of those parts.
You're mixing your epoxy, the faster you mix it, the more bubbles you're going to generate. And that's the attention, you get those bubbles come up to the top, and then burn them off.
Well, if you're pouring epoxy, it's even more important that you do that. But if it's going to be for structural, I'm not looking for a lot of air pockets regardless, because you've already applied it by the time those air bubbles are going to make. So as far as an adhesive standpoint, and epoxy countertops, it's a whole nother conversation. But epoxy adhesives, whether it's a 2-to-1 or whether it's a 1-to-1, the process is still the same. You want to make sure that part A is properly mixed in part B. And because epoxy is clear, it's pretty tough, so you just got to make sure that you're thoroughly mixing that in.
I just want to comment about the epoxy. You said it gets really hot in the container. It does give off heat as it reacts.
Yeah.
But if you spread it out, it's not a problem. It's only a problem when you leave it in the container. It sort of feeds on itself. It gets hotter and hotter, and then it gets hot enough to melt the plastic like that.
Yep. And I'll kind of piggyback off of that to go back to your statement. If you're pouring it, know that you're going to generate a lot of heat. So spreading it out, you're right, it minimizes that because the heat is spread out along the project, and the two pieces that you adhere it to will dissipate that heat. But if it's in a plastic cup and it's this thick, that fast is a lot hotter than the slow, because it's activating so much quicker.
Try to avoid butt joint when I absolutely have to. Tell me a better method. I'm using either tight line 2 or 3, and I'm putting it on the end grain to begin with, and letting it soak in for a while, and then coming back and trying to make sure I don't starve that joint. Is there some better way? I know I can add it out, I can do some other things, do some other larger glue surfaces, but is there a better method if I absolutely have to go just to that butt joint with the end grain?
Well, I mean, if you're using pocket screws, your butt joint's the only thing you got. You know, and I use pocket screws a lot, so I know. I mean, really, just know that your end grain will soak it in more. So what I typically would do is maybe sand the end grain just a little bit finer if I needed to close those grains off a little bit, and that minimizes how much it wicks in. And that same application applies if you're staining. Sometimes you need to sand that end grain just a little bit finer than you did the surface and the edge, so that it creates a more even penetration of the stain.
If you let that grain soak it in deeper first before planting, or
Potentially, but if you're not careful, you run the risk of having too much glue in there and not allowing, I mean, it burnishes the end. So I typically err on the side of caution and lightly sand it a little more, and just put a little heavier bead right there and let that, and make sure that the end is coated well. And, you know, most of the time, that's going to be the case. Now, if I'm just butting two pieces together, I'm not doing them just butt joints, you know. But if it's a box, yeah.
it's only what I have to do. You're not in play.
Well,
I just don't have a way to structure spot joints.
Right?
Using your spray adhesive, putting like a pattern on a piece of wood. I have found in the past that sometimes you can't get all that pattern. So what I have done is bought a roll of soft stick sharp paper. I put that on the wood first and put the pattern on that.
Okay.
It peels right off. But the pattern don't stick to that sharp paper.
Right, there you go. So there's all kinds of ways to use it, you know, and we all get creative, whether we use a solvent to remove it or whether we put it on something completely different. But that works too, that's a good idea. I like that. Well, keep using your solvent then. The shelf paper works great for him. Let him go. Fight it out. Just make it. Now, as a surprise, one of y'all had epoxy on your chair, so when you get ready to stand up, we'll figure out who it was. I needed 40 minutes at least for that epoxy to properly set.
Way too many clothes already.
Everybody good? Okay. If you got questions, let me know. There you go.
Very good, very good. I always learn something from my presentations. I learned something today. Very good. The next thing up is our show and tell. We're putting a show around and tell about them with our pictures and I'm really so
All I can say is that's not real woodworking.
Well, I have too much dust in my shop. One of the places I've done was tabletop. From the like the dust at the top of the table. And the first item I made was this that goes over the blade. I didn't like it very well. It was okay to cross it down. So then I came up with this idea. I had a 4-inch pipe. I put a Y on it on my dust collector. And that goes on the 4-inch. And then this goes on the tabletop. I had magnets on it, and you put it near the blade. It will reach over the fence and collect. I showed this last month. The reason I brought it back was I came up with something I like better. This has a magnet switch on it. I run the hose through it, and I can put it down to the tabletop blade. It will also fit up on the drill press or on the bandsaw. And this pivots to work very well, and the magnet lets it swivel like this. So I like that. It collects more dust at the tabletop and on the drill press and the bandsaw than I was collecting otherwise.
Bob, where'd you get that magnet switch?
I forgot where I got it. It's been a while since I got it. You turn it, it adheres to the steel or the iron.
It was great if you were replacing it like that.
Pardon?
Go get a piece of wood to hold it in, take a saw. Got one that's got a little feather thing, notice, like feather board.
Yeah.
That'd be handy.
Well, I was thinking another way you could do this, if you don't want to buy that magnet switch, is put a little miter, put a little track in your miter slot, fasten it to this. You can even put a Lazy Susan on it, and then it'll turn. And, that's one idea. Another thing, I had a friend that plays a game that uses quarters, and he was using a little plastic rack for those quarters. So, Keith brought some cedar. I took a couple of pieces of cedar and some Purple Heart and did some cove cuts on the table saw and made that nice little rack for whole quarters. It came out very well. My first time doing a cove cut, and it worked very well. I saw my wife working to get some applesauce out of this jar that has all these ridges on the bottom, and she was having a difficult time. The long spoon has a spoon part that's too big, and the short spoons won't reach. So I took some Purple Heart and cedar and I used some epoxy, put the spoon in this long handle, and it works very well for that. And I found she also uses it to do oatmeal in the morning, because that works very nice. Kind of whimsical, but she likes it, and I was happy with it.
deal with missing spoon in the drawer? How did you deal with the missing spoon in the drawer?
Well, that wasn't a standard, that was a non-standard spoon, but I asked her which one I could use, and she picked one for me. So she was happy about it. So that's all I have.
Hey, guys. Hey, guys. Yo, everybody pay attention. These guys over here, look at that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody that knows me has heard me say that I can't scroll saw. I've tried it, and I can't scroll saw. So I didn't scroll saw. I like to play with a laser. I like to do woodworking that's cheating, they say. So I'm using machines and computers and stuff like that. So this is the first box I did with a laser where I was cutting through stuff. So it's scrap stuff, but I thought it turned out really well, considering, and it looks like it was scroll sawed, kind of, sort of. So that's cheating. Next thing was this. I saw this pattern on another site, and I thought, well, I'd really like to make that. And I started asking on the thread that I saw it on, I said, I wonder how that was done, and they said, well, somebody said CNC, and I said, well, okay, that's easy. And then they said, no, CNC, no, CNC. So it was done with basic woodworking techniques, the old style. And I'm thinking, well, okay. And finally I saw a video where the guy showed using a bandsaw and a jig. Okay, I've got a big jig and I've got to try it. So I tried it, and this is my first attempt. This is the blank that you come up with, and you got to cut it out to make it round. They call it a charcuterie board, I think is what they call it. It's taken me 2 months to learn to say that. So the curves was what I thought was interesting. And I got to looking at it. It's supposedly called a pinwheel. And well, it looks cool. And then somebody said, well, it looks like it was, a tree cut from something that was too close to LSD or something. It does remind me of maybe the 60s, when we used to see funny things on the walls and stuff. But I thought it was pretty cool. So the only thing that I had as a problem was out here on some of these, there's a gap left between the curves. And the curves are, it looks challenging. But there's a curve there, and it's got a gap, and I've been mulling. I do a lot of that, trying to figure out, is it a jig or is it bandsaw wander? And I'm thinking maybe the blade's wandering a little bit, so maybe I need to slow down.
What kind of glue did you use?
I only have one glue in my shop, it's Type Bond 3. Well, I do have CA, but then as far as this, Type Bond 3 is the only thing I got, so my one glue fits all. So it does have a longer setup time, so it gave me a chance to move this around a little bit and play with it. But I thought I'd go ahead and finish it and see how it turns out, and then maybe try another one.
How did you plan that? Did you put
A band clamp around. Yeah, band clamp all around. Now, the guy that did the one in the video is doing like 3 of these at a time with some 2x4 setup bolted down to the table and clamping them around. That probably works. And it might be a better way, but I'm impatient too. So I put them all together and clamp them together.
Did you use the pattern on it to cut with?
I used, there's a jig that you use to cut the pieces, and you put 2 pieces on the jig, one in one position, one in the other position, and you cut this cut on both pieces at the same time.
So that matches up perfect.
So it's supposed to, but they're not laid in the exact same place where the cut is.
The problem is when you do something round like that, then try to pull it all together. First time I did a scroll saw project like that, I had all this time.
Well, the center ain't perfect.
Messes you up, you go clamping it around, it catches up to you before you get all the way around.
Yeah, the center's not perfect, but I wasn't going to leave the center like that either. I've got to cut it out and put it on something to cut it in a bandsaw and cut it around. So I thought I'd put a circular something in the middle to dial it up a little more.
First thing happens when you start sanding it and making fit, it's worse and worse.
Yeah, so I didn't sand it much. That's basically right off the bandsaw and put together.
That's good.
Another thing, the class, we're up to start to spin it. So how many of it is not,
Oh yeah, I'd say probably a lot. But that's my project.
Good.
Well, a while back, somebody gave me a piece of wood, said, can you make something out of this?
Well, yeah, I guess I killed them, whatever, but found out that had a rotten place in it, so I took a throttle bit and just cut a hole in the rough part and glued it in and then turned it on the lathe. And that's something that looks a little different. And it's a maple and a Marland finish on it, so I think they turned out right for what they are. For sure, really not had enough money, that's for sure. Maple. Yeah, actually, it's always a Norway maple, whatever that is. They're in very good shape.
Very good.
Wouldn't you be surprised if somebody else got up and said this was theirs? This is my last attempt in Tarja. This piece has 104 pieces in it, and this has 94, and they were a nightmare. This has yellow heart and purple heart in it, and it was harder than heck to saw. And the little pieces were so hard to hold that I had to put them in a vise to sand them. So, any questions?
How much time did you put in?
Probably, 2 or 3 weeks with the 2 of them.
Beautiful.
I got a little pair of needle vice grips that really works good for setting the small parts.
Yeah, but I have a hard time holding that with my left hand because I have arthritis so bad in it. So
These be solid for you.
yeah, it's hard. So Dave just bought me a 2-inch vise, so it'll hold little tiny pieces for me so that I can put them in there and sand them and I don't have to use my left hand. Because you can see my knuckle is swelled up now, and if you just touch my finger, it hurts like the dickens, and so I'm really having a hard time doing any kind of little work, and if you do intarsia, you do little work. So.
Judy Gale Roberts.
I don't remember, I think they probably are Judy Gale Roberts. But, yeah. I have a seahorse that I did before, and so these 2 will go on the wall with that one, so, yeah. So, somebody asked me, what do I do with all of these things? I told them, I just put them on the wall.
You can run out of the wall one of these days.
That's what Dave keeps saying, but we have a lot of walls because we have a big house.
Very good.
Thanks.
Is it? Well, the next thing would be our raffle.
Sorry.
I will say this, I'm getting ready to leave, but at 1 o'clock, one of the guys from Robert Sorty will be here doing a demonstration. Told them we're going to pass on. You guys are welcome to come back and watch. And, see that.
What's it about, Chris? What's it about 1:30?
It's